Last one, jumping in. So I think the last one we can wrap this up. The one that really stood out to me as I pushed my way over 40, and it wasn't something that I wasn't doing before, but it's something I recognized I needed to do, was doing a proper warm-up before I got started.
Yes, man.
Most dudes, as they get older, they're not thinking this way.
Yep.
They're just like, get me into the gym, let's get this done.
Do a couple warm-up sets.
Yeah, like whatever you're doing, a couple warm-up sets and we get going, versus a thorough, like maybe active dynamic warm-up, or just some type of warm-up that helps me do a couple things. One, gets my head in the game, right? Like just kind of gets me to downregulate all the shit that happened during the day and gets me kind of focused, right? Like I put the phone down, it goes over and it's like, okay, I am into this thing now. And I am trying to prep my body for about what I'm about to take it through. What does that mean as you get older in age? Well, think about it this way. Like, this might not be an awesome analogy. Oh, for the car guys, you left a car sitting in the garage for 10 years.
Yes.
Right. You got all those seals within the motor, right? You have, or the engine, you got head gaskets, you got oil pan gaskets, right? You've got rings in your cylinders. You've got, when we're talking about gaskets, you could be talking about like what's going on in the valve covers if you're running a car. That shit gets dried out if you're not using it, right? Yes. It gets crusty, right? It gets brittle.
Your connective tissue works the same way.
The same way. Same way. So like, just understand that you may be able to fire up that classic car that's in the garage, after 10 years and, charging the battery or whatever, but you're living on borrowed time. If you went out and ran it hard, you're probably going to spring a leak somewhere.
Yes.
And in a car, that means replacing a gasket and pulling a motor apart or an engine apart. In a human, that could be a little less cool. And usually what happens with that is it happens over time, right? But your tissue quality is just not the same. It needs to be hydrated.
Yes.
You think about muscle fibers sliding and gliding over one another. If you haven't been exercising very much, or you have always done like a bodybuilding routine and now you're jumping into something that's a little bit more high intensity, I mean, a la CrossFit, or something like that, you need to have, your body needs to be prepared to do that. And so switching on the neurological system, switching on the circulatory system, getting the neuromuscular system to fire signals back and forth, to turn things on and downregulate others, and hydrate those fibers, hydrate those old, crusty, dried rubber bands, you have, and lube those things up. And the joint capsules that, those bones are attached to and whatever, or articulate through, that shit's important. And if you don't believe me, just keep not warming up. It'll catch up with you.
This one kind of gets me pretty fired up, because there's still some people who preach, oh, you just go and you just do a couple warm-up sets, you practice what you're going to do, and that's good, right? And I would argue someone who says that has never worked with general population people who are who haven't worked out in years, who are sedentary, they have not worked with the population for a given amount of time. Because yes, if you are trained and you're active and you're doing all these things, there's some days my warm-up, I go in and it's a little bit less intentional. It's a little bit more just doing some warm-up sets.
Free flow
and going. But if you do not need to spend 45 minutes foam rolling, that's not an effective warm-up. You don't need to be wasting your time doing all these drills. But if you're primarily sedentary, you haven't done these things, you need to get some awareness, some focus, some blood flow, some movement. You need to connect with certain areas of your body that you're probably not connected to fire in ways that we want. So yes, you need to warm up. It needs to be intentional. Again, it shouldn't be a 45-minute warm-up. You need to actually work out. You need to go do the things. But 10, 15 minutes of intentional, specific warm-ups that get you there, I promise you need to do that.
Yeah, as it relates to building muscle,
yes,
that preloading, all of that stuff going into your heavier lifts or your more intense portion of your workout program, which if you're building muscle, it's probably happening inside the first 15, 20 minutes, of your workout routine. At least it should be, if the goal is building muscle. We're pushing a little heavier loads, or we're working through a deeper, more challenging range of motion and things like that. God, that is so important to have things ready to go.
Yes.
You don't want to get, 2 sets in and you're still warming up.
Yeah.
Right. Then effectively those 2 sets don't count. If, that might be a kind of a rough way of looking at it, but yeah, you want to go in and be ready to work when it's time to work. And so here's another thing, again, building muscle over 40, warming up. I think if you spent some time warming up and you had a good warm up routine, And you can change it up. You don't have to your point, you don't have to do the same thing every time.
Yes.
But it gets you to touch, I guess get in touch with like what's going on with my body today. Like that shoulder's kind of been bothering me a little bit, and I can really feel that here. It may clue you into issues that you might need to address through the warm-up process or in the workouts in general. At least it's kind of a breadcrumb trail to, hey, how can I be doing this better so that I can remain consistent, right? I can still have the same volume and intensity that I want to have, and not discount that, because that will rear its ugly head. Oftentimes as you get older, going back, why? We just don't have the same resiliency. Like our tissue quality is generally not the same. We're less testosterone than we did, even if you're on TRT. Like your body just doesn't function quite the same as it did when you were 25. Now that you're 45, so give it a break, give it a chance, right, to be successful. And spending a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, going through some very specific, things at the beginning of a workout can be super helpful.
Well, and I think a common thing when you're younger, even if we're thinking like as a teenager, you're moving more, you're getting to these ranges of motions more throughout your day. So kind of like you said, like the car that's not been started up and these gears haven't been firing for a long time, a lot of it is if you especially have a job where you're not moving and you're not getting to these ranges of motions, often that's where it's even more important. I will say the more you get into a dedicated routine and the more you are moving often and your programming is sufficient down the line, yes, your warm-ups, not even speaking of myself, your warm-ups can be more efficient, more effective, less time consuming, and it can vary day to day, like we had said as well. Some days it may need a little extra love because that shoulders feel a little funny before you bench. Some days you can maybe just do, I see this with Cece all the time. It's a good example with her. I see this, some days she comes in and I'll see her warm up 15 minutes and she's getting her body ready. She's doing some mobility. She's doing some priming. Some days I'll see Cece and she'll do like 3 minutes of warming up and then she's on the bench and she's going. And that's her awareness of her body. So it's not saying you have to do a set 15-minute warm up for the rest of every day you exercise always. But if you haven't been exercising, yes, you need to do that. The longer you're consistent with your programming, you're not sedentary so much throughout the day, you're not getting, or weak, all these different things, the less that you do need to be intentional about that warm-up.